Hi and welcome everyone. I'm the host today from the Islamabad Transformative Technology chapter. My name is Haider Shishmahal, and transformative technology are basically any type of technology that can help in human enhancement, in cognitive functioning, in positive well-being. Because it's a technology, we don't consider it to, necessarily be face-to-face, like the kind of work that a therapist or someone else does. It's scalable, it's accessible. Usually it's often found on a mobile, or it might be some kind of hardware device, like Yishel is going to present some of her technology, or it might be some kind of game platform or something running. If it's running on electricity, it's probably a technology. And if it's helping you in behavioral change or in transforming your life in some positive way, it can be considered a transformative technology. So today with me is Yishel Khan, and she has the honor, amongst many other honors, of being in the transformative technology field and being a Pakistani. Although she is also in Canada and she's also in US, she actually has her business, you can say, based in Canada and in Pakistan, and has also worked in and lived in the US for her business in incubation. So her more formal introduction is that she is a graduate in electrical engineering from McGill, and she has been really passionate about helping people by combining technology and medicine. And she has worked with special needs populations for over 10 years. She founded DOT in 2015 to make mental health therapies more personalized, measurable, effective, and accessible. She has raised investor funding, built a solid team, and received numerous accolades for innovation, medicine technology, and women empowerment. She has been part of the Founder Institute. She's been part of Hacking Health, Where Hacks, Texas Medical Center Accelerator, Next AI, National Incubation Center Karachi, Standard Chartered Women in Tech, and she won the grant there, and she's going to share her journey. And she's also part of She Loves Tech. She's been recognized in Pakistan, she's been recognized in Canada and in the US. She manages Dot Mind Unlocked, and we're going to be talking about her journey and about her company. And basically, it's an automated platform that uses machine learning, and specifically it uses EEG, and it helps with sleep disorders and with anxiety and with breathing. So prior to Dot, Yishel was a software developer at Ericsson for 3 years. She worked on 5G. She's also led Women in Leadership chapter in Ottawa and has been on the Committee of Youth Leadership, where she has also established the Ottawa Ericsson Center. So that's the whole thing. Yishel, now over to you. If you can kind of tell us on how you started and when you started Dot and Mind, because some of the people who are here and some of the people who are going to be viewing this recording are young entrepreneurs like yourself, and they have ideas, but they don't know exactly how to get started. So how did you get started?
First of all, thank you for the introduction, Heather. That was very kind of you. And thank you for having me on this platform so that I can share my journey. Once again, just to reiterate your question, this wasn't a planned journey for me, so I can just in retrospect tell you what I did, and hopefully people who are interested in this field can learn. So basically, I went to school for engineering, and after I graduated, my plan was to go to med school. Prior to going to med school, I wanted to work for a little bit and save up enough money and then be able to go to med school by myself. Prior to finding work, I ended up taking part in one of those hackathon events. So for those who don't know what a hackathon is, it's one of those events where you go, they're usually teams, you can code for 48 hours. Ours had a bunch of sensors in it, and then you can come up with something innovative. Given that my passion was in trying to help people with special needs, I ended up making an app for children with autism, and it got a lot of recognition. Next thing you know, we were being connected with doctors and neuroscientists, and they were very interested in what we were doing, got selected for several incubation centers. We got a lot of fellowships and scholarships into these incubation centers. And without me even realizing it, I was on the journey of forming a company. So if someone wants to make a more deliberate move, it would be your good starting point would be to go to one of these events, go to networking events. I think that's one of the points I would emphasize on so much. One of the things in Pakistan that I see is there's still a lot of people are scared of sharing ideas, which leads to not meaningful outcomes or meaningful connections being made, which in hindsight are so vital. Me by myself, I could not have done what we have today if it weren't for the people I've met, if it weren't for the doctors, the neuroscientists, even my own team. It was a process of putting myself out there. And whether people get so fixated on someone will steal my idea, someone will copy me. Well, you need to realize that the world is it's I keep saying this, and I know maybe it's naive, but it is a big enough place. For you to think that if someone steals your idea, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who has your idea. It comes down to the execution, and execution is not possible without a solid team. So that's to give you an overview of where I started and how it came about. Do you want me to talk about DOT as well, or?
No, so I mean, I think that's really interesting, and I think you're absolutely right. When you say that going to some of these events does lead to sort of unintended consequences, like what happened with you is that you go somewhere and you have some fun and you make something, and the next thing you know, you're being connected to someone else. But I think there is also that kind of risk factor that you kind of have to, you have to take that plunge, you have to take that step. And maybe you can tell us a little bit about that next, when you took the step to leave your job and concentrate on that full time. But before that, I think when it comes to sharing ideas, I think that's absolutely correct. We are very scared of sharing ideas, but we have to find that balance on what we can share and what that gets us, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah, please do tell me about the, how, when you decided to, take the plunge. So, you went in and you got some recognition, but what was the next? Did somebody push you? Did somebody support you or guide you? How did that happen?
It was, yeah, definitely. I would say it's about, so through these incubation centers, you meet a lot of mentors and advisors. And it really, really helps to have someone who understands the industry be your mentor and follow in their footsteps, because without a good, person who you can rely on and get guidance from, you're lost. So the reason why I say that is because, so when I ended up coming up with this idea and getting a lot of recognition, it was not just me, it was me with a couple of friends. It was a team of, I want to say 7 people. And then, so then when we got selected for these different incubation centers and, these accelerators, and people were pushing us to move this forward, a lot of other people, so we were all at that stage in our life where we had graduated, everyone was looking for a job. It meant either picking up a job or working on this. And obviously everyone needs to pay bills. So a lot of people on the team were very hesitant, and they said, well, they weren't truly believers of it. They were like, okay, well, this is great, but it won't pay my bills. So this is a nice side project, but I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. So they ended up leaving us, which creates another big hurdle, because yes, one thing to note is when these people that you meet at hackathon events won't necessarily, sometimes they will be the, people you stick with for the rest of your life, but a lot of times your team will iterate, and that's okay. So for me, it was a little difficult. So now it came down to, I think it was 3 of us that decided to move forward with this. With 3 people with an idea that still needs to be validated. Getting funding was a huge point of contingency for us. We couldn't overcome that hurdle. Obviously, we were new. We had an idea that we had created in 48 hours, literally. So we had to figure out what the next steps were going to be, and how much time we can truly dedicate to this. Obviously, everyone needs to pay their own bills. The one good thing about people, once again, I'm gonna keep reflecting to the Pakistani community, because I think we're trying to provide value there as well, is people need to realize the advantage they have. They're living at home, their bills are paid for. Take advantage of it. Don't take it for granted. You have so much, you have freedom in that sense. You need to, if there's something you want to do, you have your entire family's backing you. A lot of people don't have that opportunity. So take advantage of it. Don't just take it for granted, because that becomes a reason why people pick or quit anything they're interested in. So if you have that already taken care of, that's all the more reason to pursue your passion. That's all the more reason to take advantage of and leverage this support system you have around you. But I was in Canada at that point, and what ended up happening is funding was a little difficult. So what I ended up doing is I had to as well pick up a daytime job alongside my other team members to pay the bills. That's when I ended up joining Ericsson, and I was there for about 3 years. And it just so happened that the idea that this whole hackathon and idea started off in Montreal, which is another city. And then I moved to Ottawa for my job because that's where I landed the job. And then literally the accelerator we had was in Montreal. So 3 times a week, I would be traveling down to Montreal right after my daytime job because the classes were in the evenings, and the classes were from 5 to, I believe, like 10 p.m. And then there were days where I would catch the bus. I did not have a car at that point at 12 a.m., come back, reach Ottawa by 3 a.m., maybe get an hour or two of sleep and be off to work again, because you need to put in the struggle. And this happened for a good 4 months because that's the duration of the program, and I was dedicated. At that point, I was committed. I wanted to make the most of it. I had a steady job, I had a good income. I didn't need to worry about paying bills, but at the same time, I was passionate about this. So, you need to put in the hustle, you need to put in the hard work, you need to go the extra mile. It's not going to be the case always, but at the start, it's so crucial. And that's why you need the passion for it, because if you're not passionate about what you're doing, you will not go through with that effort or that struggle.
Yeah, and so I think that's absolutely right. And you noted some good points about family in Pakistan, and one of the big pros on how they support you. But families can also be discouraging sometimes. When they say that, oh, what is this? No one's gonna look at this. What this is too, advanced for us here. Who's gonna wear these headsets? And what is an EEG? Sometimes they don't understand what it is you're doing. We get that a lot when we say we make video games. That's like, what does that mean? So right. So and then you're doing something that's even more niche. So you say, oh, I'm making video games for anxiety. So here you have to first educate them what is anxiety and then what is. So I think one of the things is that perhaps you had a lot of that flexibility and support from your family. And I think the other thing is perhaps you were able to communicate how passionate you were about .Mind Unlocked, right? So
there's 2 sides to that. My dad is a military man. Yeah. So
okay.
He's not that he was never supportive. I will say that I feel blessed that I did have parents who are generally very supportive, but he's from the military. He's by the book. He likes to, do things as is, and there's no deviation. This was a complete deviation from the roadmap I had for my life. So for him to truly come to terms, especially with this domain where anxiety, mental health, in that generation is still like a big question mark. Does it really exist? Does it not? So he was treading on more like, it was a more risky venture in his eyes, at least. So he would constantly be like, are you sure? Do you really want to be doing this? There's other things, and why don't you look at this and that? And there were a little bit of hesitation. Obviously, I do understand that a lot of parents may not be that supportive. So it's a matter of using stories like this and using other stories to show people that what, if they want, they can. Not only to people who are interested in making things, but also to parents. They need to see these success stories. They need to see what can the outcome be, and learn to be a little bit more supportive. So definitely there is a little bit of both that goes into this whole play, I guess.
Yishel, one of the things about your story from when we last talked, which I found really fantastic, is your willingness to pick up and move to different places and to try your luck at different events. I mean, you from Canada, you came to Karachi to take part in programs like She Loves Tech and the Standard Women application, and you also went to America to participate in accelerators there. So what were you thinking when going from Canada or from US to come back to Karachi? what kind of thoughts did you have that made you come back and spend the amount of time you did in Karachi and being part of the entrepreneurship and startup network there? And how did that tie in with some of the success that Mind Unlock was able to achieve later?
Yeah, so there's a lot of, it's been a roller coaster journey. What a lot of people don't see behind the scenes is the struggle. You only see us on social media where you only see the accolades and awards and the success, but there's so much of mental health problems that go behind the scenes personally for myself as well. But the reason why I bring that up is because my reasoning for moving from Canada to the US, first of all, was because finding funding here was a huge challenge. And I was over time becoming, obviously I had been at Ericsson for about 3 years. I felt myself becoming complacent. You know, cushy job, pays well. I was putting in the effort, but you know, after the 4 month period, it was the time invested in my company. Obviously, after 2 years, considering that there was no positive response, was going down a little bit. And at this point, you hit that mode of desperation where you want anything and everything to stick. I was like, you know what? And then suddenly my startup was getting a lot of recognition in the US because we were present online and we weren't connected to different accelerators there as well. So ended up going and pitching at an event over there. Next thing you know, bought into an accelerator in the US, ended up saving enough at Ericsson, made the leap, moved to the US for a year. My initial intention of coming to Pakistan was based on the fact that I had limited funds for about a year. I knew I had to do something in a year. Otherwise, I had quit my job at this point. I had to make whatever had to come out of it in a year. Moving to the US, being in another accelerator over there, it's the Texas Medical Accelerator. I realized that some really tangible progress had to be made for us to be fundable. So in terms of, one of the things was in terms of game development, the game had to be developed. And sheer move out of desperation, I was like, you know what, let me try contacting a few, obviously labor is a little bit more affordable in Pakistan. So I was like, let me contact a few consultancy companies there. Initial experience, as I mentioned to you, was not the greatest. It was all online, and the outcome of what I wanted was not what I expected it to be. So I ended up literally just taking a flight and going to Karachi and then going around these different networks, trying to figure out how I can make the game better. In the process of doing that, I ended up meeting some really great people who are now a part of my team. So it was all, it just so happened, call it coincidence, luck, whatever, but it just, one thing led to another. And prior to this, the reason why I wasn't, didn't think of Pakistan earlier to that is, I'll give a little bit of background to the people listening in, is because I never really worked in Pakistan. I flip-flop between, my family is based out of the UAE, so I was not aware of the work culture in Pakistan specifically up until this point. And then that's when I learned about the people there, the skill set that they have, the dedication, the passion that they have. Obviously, that too was an iterative process. I'm not going to say I went to Pakistan and suddenly I met really wonderful people. No, it did take about a year for me to meet the right people. It was an iterative process. There were people who came, there were people who left. And then the people who stuck around are the people who are the core of essence of my team. And my development team is, I would say, their skill set, they're all young, but their skill set is way stronger than any 10-year experienced person in this part of the world, for sure.
Interesting. That's fantastic. And I think that gives a lot of sort of courage and pride to other Pakistanis listening in. And I think to people around the world, also making them think, because we often live within this own bubble, and like you said, you get complacent, you're in this job, you're like, okay, things are good, and then you have to sort of push yourself, take a chance, trust your instinct, and be desperate to make the company work. So Dot and Mind started in 2015, and you initially funded it through, while working in your job and part-time, like a lot of, I think, entrepreneurs do in the very beginning, is they don't, until they see it going somewhere, they keep their jobs. And I think that's probably a very wise decision. And then I think in 2017, you went full-time, is it?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the kind of products that Dot and Mind Unlocked has right now in the market. So what is, and also please do define, because everyone might not be clear on what the hardware is or how an EEG is used or what is an EEG. So, just keep it to the layperson about your
Absolutely.
hardware and software in your company.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think I talked about the company, so I'll give, I apologize for that. I'll give people a little bit of background. So Dot Mind Unlocked, it uses a data-driven approach to mental health. And what that means is that we read brainwave activities through a headset that we've developed to not only diagnose different mental health conditions or disorders, but also provide therapy through games. So to give people a little bit of background, I do have the headset in front of me. This is the first model of the headset that's been tested on uh, I want to say like thousands of people at this point. It stayed strong, so we're very proud of it. Obviously, now the new version that we have is way more sleek and it's evolved over time with any hardware technology. But basically, what happens is there are sensors on the front. What these sensors do is they touch your forehead and they read your brainwave activity, which is EEG signaling. Any and every mental health condition is diagnosable via EEG. There's the reason why it's not done in that manner in the medical industry today is because there's a disconnect between the medical research that's taking place and the technology that's being developed. So right now, the way to diagnose mental disorders is through behavioral therapy. So you look at, it's all based on behavior. The DSM-5, you can see a bunch of criteria. More or less, it's all based on behavioral patterns. What we're trying to do is break that norm because a lot of the things that we saw that misdiagnosis was a huge concern. People not getting the right treatment was a huge concern. And then comes the second part, which is the therapy. Right now, the therapy being provided is entirely based on medication. What medication does is, yes, I'm not going to say that it's completely, it shouldn't be used and it's not beneficial. Of course, it has, the reason why people resort to medication is because it has immediate effects. So if someone is, for example, attention deficit, if they have ADHD, which is attention deficiency hyperactive disorder, they give them a pill of Ritalin or Adderall, and then you see immediate effects. So parents think that's good. But what they don't realize is all of these medications have detrimental side effects. And over time, with any medication, you need to increase the dosage, you need to increase the quantity. The medication may or may not be working, and you won't even know up until it's too late. So what we're trying to do is move away from that and provide therapy through games. Now, how does that help? Games, while we're trying to create games for different mental health conditions, we're starting off with ADHD. Now we have actually an app called Breathe for depression, stress, and anxiety as well. So what this does is while the person is playing the games, we're monitoring their EEG signaling. So there's specific markers that determines whether someone has ADHD. And looking at those markers, we're trying to, for example, going into a little bit more technical terms, there's the theta, beta, theta, alpha ratios. There's a decrease in these ratios, which is your EEG signaling, which quantifies ADHD, for example. So what we're trying to do is produce more of that certain brainwave, so be it alpha, be it beta, be it theta, through catering the game in such a way that it produces that specific signaling. And then this part of the research, a lot of it already exists. A lot of it is through learning more about people through testing with the device. But the whole purpose of doing this is to be able to learn what people's specific needs are and then cater to them through games without the use of medication. So that's where we're currently at. In terms of what we haven't, the headset has not commercially launched in the market. There have been a little delays, as I had discussed with you earlier on. COVID-19 played a huge role in our headsets. The chips were being manufactured in China, and then that got backlogged, and they're finally on their way, which is what brings me to Canada, is because I'm waiting for the chips. They were not delivering to Pakistan, so I had to come here. Once the chips are here, then I would take them, and then we're going back to Pakistan to test with the 10 organizations that we have a signed contract with. So for Pakistan, we're going to be launching as a B2B, meaning we're going to be giving our headset and our solution to mental health therapists. So that's the mental health therapist aspect of our business. What's currently in the market is our application called Breathe. Obviously, out of when this whole pandemic situation happened, we realized that there's a lot of people who would have really benefited from our technology being available in the market, because mental health is a huge concern right now as a subsequent of the pandemic. So literally over the time frame of a month, my team, excellent team, so proud of my team in Pakistan, and I will give a shout out to Usman, Saad, and Nafis. They executed so quickly within a month, created the app that we wanted, and the app's called Breathe. And Breathe is basically an app to help people achieve a calmer, happier, healthier mindset. And I can get into the details if you would like, but I'd rather pause and hand over to you.
Yeah, well, I just downloaded Breathe earlier and I used it. And it has an English version and an Urdu version. And Breathe is basically, it's an app. So I'm going to give my perspective on it. It's an app that you use for breathing. So there's a lot of research that there are different breathing styles. For example, box breathing, and the one that it's got named, the one by the Russian. What is it called? Buteyko.
Buteyko breathing. Yeah.
Yeah, which I was very bad at, by the way, because it was my first time doing it. So I was like, wait, I think that, what it does is, so Buteyko is what it tells you is to breathe in and breathe out and get comfortable, and then see how long you can kind of, after exhaling, wait before you breathe in again. And the sort of the research on this is that it helps people who have asthma or breathing difficulties and other types of breathing that is there. So I think there are 3 types of breathing. There's box breathing, and that also can help you with anxiety, and a lot of, I think guided meditations and focusing first begin with this kind of breathing technique. So yes, I saw that app. It was a very nice app, and it's there for free, and I really liked it. And, last time we discussed, this is what you said when you were talking about guided meditation.
Oh, no. So basically, that's coming. So as
okay,
I said,
we
executed, really quickly, wanted the app out and up and running. So every week we add new features. The latest feature we'll be adding is guided meditation.
Okay.
That is not on the app on the market currently. That's going to come out next week.
So that's going to be part of the Breathe app, or is it just
yes, it's going to be a part of the Breathe app.
Okay, so it's very good, and I think that that's a really nice kind of rollout, in the sense that you were able to quickly make something, and I think that gives that's a pretty good plan for other technology entrepreneurs who might be here. Is, it's one thing that if you just wait, you want everything to be perfect. I know some people who never launch their products because they're striving for perfection and they want everything. Whereas I think, you rolled out, you had the features for 3 types of breathing exercises, breathing in, breathing out, different types of breathing exercises, and you explained a little bit about them, and you did it in English and you did it in Urdu, and you rolled it out. And then you've got, further features planned and coming and being implemented. And I think, coming back to a point that you made earlier when you talked about sharing your ideas, and how you shouldn't be afraid of sharing your ideas, because eventually what people will do in the execution usually is going to be very different. And so I'm going to say that I agree with you on that in terms of, what I was proposing, and so far what has released on Breathe. They're pretty different apps. And I know that there was an app of this type that was being released from LUMS, and I spoke to the professors there, and we were both kind of like trying to, not really wanting to share with each other what we were doing, but what we did share, it seemed that, while we were in the same category, what we were doing was kind of different. And I think the other thing is that rather than see it as a zero-sum game, we should see it that this is a new type of technology, especially in frontier developing countries like Pakistan. So in fact, the more apps that will come out will increase the overall marketplace, because I think the biggest thing that we're lacking is awareness. So, if you launch something and I launch something, and somebody else launches something, then all the people who come to our individual apps will find it easier to come to your app or to the next app, because otherwise they weren't really knowing about this whole
Absolutely.
sort of mental wellness through technology. So that being said, there are times where things do get cloned, and that happens especially in mature markets. But I think with transformative technology being a developing market right now, at least in countries where you're trying to do it like in Urdu, or you're doing it in different local and regional languages, I think it's better just definitely to reach out and try to make a community. And I've seen that in the games, in the indie games community. I've seen that in the transformative technology community, that there is a big openness to share ideas. And I think that's really kind of commendable. So anything that you would like to add to that, or add to about, show some videos of your apps or anything like that if you've got?
Yeah, so what I'll do is actually just in the chat itself, I'll post the link to the app if anyone's interested in downloading it, and then I'll share my screen and I can I tried demoing the app through the tablet, but I don't know if you guys would be able to see it. So let me just share the link here. And then, yeah, just to reiterate your point, I think creating awareness is that is a challenge for us too. So if you go to our Instagram page, you'll see a lot of our posts. They're heavy on text, and the reason is educating people is so important. In terms of just breathing itself, and I'll talk a little bit more about this because I feel it will benefit people, is we all take it for granted. It's the first thing you do when you're born, it's the last thing you do before you die. But yet we all just because it's an involuntary action, we all take it for granted. We don't realize the impact breathing has on your nervous system. And that is the core essence of us introducing breathing exercises as well as guided meditation. So what breathing, what is the, one of our posts is about, what is the first thing you tell a person who's about to have a nervous breakdown? You tell them to take a deep breath. There's a reason behind that. It's not just there because, it's a saying, but there's actually research behind it. The reason why you tell someone to take a deep breath is because it activates your parasympathetic system. There's two parts to your nervous system. There's the parasympathetic and then there's the sympathetic. And the reason why I'm going into the physiology is because when people realize that there is a scientific connection, suddenly there is a little bit more credibility, and then they want to take it more seriously. So when your parasympathetic nervous system is activated, you are in a relaxed state because your breathing, it becomes deepened, it slows down, your heart rate reduces. And now there's new scientific research which says that when you're in a calm state, when your breaths are deeper and slower, it actually activates a neuronal oscillation in the parts of your brain which regulates emotion. Meaning that your brain actually starts firing off signals into your body, telling your body to calm down. So with just a simple breath, you can actually induce that effect of calming down. Similarly, the sympathetic system is responsible for fight or flight. So when you're having an anxiety attack, when you're having a panic attack, when you're about to be attacked by a lion, for example, that's when adrenaline kicks in, high stress situation, you need to act. And that's when your breathing becomes shallow, it becomes quicker, your heart rate increases. It's your body's natural response. So the point that I'm trying to make is you can actually control the response you want in your body without the need of external medication. You can use your breathing to train your body to achieve the response that you want to achieve, rather than relying on external sources, which is why it's so important to breathe correctly. It sounds silly to say, but it's so true. Most of us, our breathing is very shallow. I actually recently just met a gentleman who does a whole course in, I don't know if you've heard of him, he's based out of Karachi, Umar Sham. He does a really good course on how to breathe properly. So he teaches you how to take in breath, and a lot of people have deviated septum. So he talks about how to address that issue so that you can actually achieve full breathing. And just to be mindful, like for example, if you're about to have an anxiety or a panic attack, if you take out literally 2 minutes to do the few breathing techniques we have in our application, it will calm you down. Similarly, if you're about to start working on something important and you want your focus to be spot on, you can use the box breathing technique, for example. And then, there's the third exercise that we have. We're going to build on, obviously, the exercises that are available. The Buteyko breathing, that is essential for anyone who's a patient of asthma, who has weak lungs. I myself am a victim of that, actually. My CP score was horrible. It's one of the worst, which means I don't do enough exercise, which means my lung capacity is not the greatest. So things to realize, people need to self-reflect and realize that you need to strengthen your lungs, because obviously with this whole COVID situation as well, what is the primary thing that's being affected? Your lungs. So if you don't have, if your lungs, your respiratory setup is already compromised, you are more vulnerable to the situation. So very important to take these things a little bit more seriously. But you're absolutely right. Educating people, telling them that there is a scientific, biological explanation behind what we're doing. It's not just a random breathing app that we've created. There's research behind it. So that's just one of the points I wanted to emphasize. If you want, I can share my screen and then go over like the email that I sent out.
I think what would be really great is if you can share your screen, and if you have the app or a video of the app, and we can all do a box breathing or a Buteyko, so we can kind of get an idea, even if you do it on the tab, and just so we can all do that together and get an idea of the things that you're talking about, because I understand it because I just used the app earlier today. And I think some of the people on the call, this might be new for them. So if we can do it during this call, I think that's a great value add that we can give to our attendees.
Absolutely. So I don't know if my only problem is I think there'll be a lot of glare on the app. So this is what the app looks like. The first tab says relaxing exercises. So this is basically this has the breathing exercises, and the second tab is the track progress. So what I'll do is I'll click on the relaxing exercises, and the three exercises that I mentioned, I don't know if you can see them, would show up. It has box breathing, Buteyko breathing, and I think there's a glare.
That's fine. Let's just do one of them. Let's pick one of these, whichever one I think is your favorite.
Yeah. Let's go with box breathing, because that's the one that improves focus, right? So if I click on box, let me just turn the volume up so you guys can hear. Okay. So I'll read out the explanation so that everyone knows what it's about, and then I'll go into the exercise itself. So when you open the app, the exercise itself, it gives you a little blurb explaining how to use the exercise. Box breathing is a technique used by Navy SEAL commanders to help calm the mind and improve focus. So the method includes: begin by sitting in a straight, comfortable position. Then you inhale for 4 seconds, hold your breath for another 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, hold your breath for another 4 seconds, and then you repeat this. And then you can do this exercise for 1 minute, you can do it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, etc. This exercise can help regulate involuntary body functions such as body temperature. Additionally, holding your breath allows for the buildup of carbon dioxide, which over time increases your lungs' capacity to retain CO2. So now I'll go to the exercise itself. I'll select the 1 minute. This is what it looks like. I'm not sure if you guys can see.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. 1 minute, and then I press play. So now what you're gonna do is it's gonna tell you to breathe in.
Yeah, we can see it. So everyone, just let's follow along. Breathe in, hold, breathe out.
And then hold.
And then hold.
Then breathe in, hold, breathe out, hold, breathe in, hold, breathe out, hold, breathe in, and that was basically a minute, and you can breathe out.
Oh, that was fast. I mean, I didn't even notice.
Yeah, it was a minute. I did the minute because I didn't want to take up too much time.
I think it's fantastic, and I feel more calm and centered, and it's definitely something I'm going to try. I think I'm also going to try the Buteyko because you mentioned the CP. So the CP is the controlled pause So that one, you're supposed to hold your breath for longer. And, I just did like that, and I held my breath for 17 seconds. I thought it was pretty good. And it's like, you might have a severe illness. I was like, no, I don't. It's like, So then I did it again. And then I managed 30 seconds the next time. And then it's like, yeah, you still need to improve on that. So then I was like, I'm going to research this and find out. But I found out that, 30 seconds is good for an average person who doesn't do Buteyko. But if you do Buteyko, it should, go up to 60 seconds and even 90 seconds in maximum. And so that made me really interested, because that it's kind of like a gamified experience as well, because, I want to reach the next level of breathing and being in swimming, and reading the research that how it helps me, and it's supposed to do it for twice in a day. So I'm really excited about checking it out for 2 weeks and seeing how the habit changes my workflow or my productivity. Yishel, do you probably use it yourself? Do you think it puts you in a state of flow, or is it just for the asthma, or does it help with cognitive enhancement as well? What does the research say about that?
Yeah, so it depends on which one you're doing. All of them do have actively different nervous systems, as I mentioned earlier on. So Buteyko is primarily there to help you improve your lung function. So if that's what you think needs, obviously, and this improves if you are not someone who exercises regularly, it will be lower than the average norm, which means, once again, everything's interlinked. You need to exercise more. You need to practice this exercise, breathing exercises more if you're not physically moving around. And then 3-6-5 breathing method, that's just basically inhale for 5 seconds, exhale for 5 seconds. In a calm state, you want your mind to be centered at this point. That induces like a feeling of calm, relaxation. Do it for 5 minutes, do it for 10 minutes, sit comfortably, listen to the music, try to clear your mind. You will over time achieve mind clarity. I do all of these exercises myself. I try doing them even when I'm walking around, just to plug in and do these exercises. One of the demands I keep getting from people is to get an iOS version, because a lot of people are not on Android, which is one thing I think I will start looking into myself, because I feel like it's more difficult for me to carry my tab or my testing devices around. So definitely iOS version coming out shortly, but in general, it's so useful to practice. And then I think the main point here is you can track your progress over time. So as you mentioned, if your CP at the start was 17, 30, over time you can see it improve. And that's validation. That's visual validation for you that, what, yes, I am improving. Instead of keeping notes in a tab, where we're giving you everything you want in the app itself. And then down the line, to make it even more data driven, when our headset comes out, we're going to link the headset to these exercises. So then you're monitoring your alpha waves, which are associated with the relaxation, to these exercises. So we're, the point of that is realizing if you're even entering that relaxed state or not, if the exercise is even working for you or not. So various metrics you can use to achieve different states, but this is the one we have on the market. So I do urge everyone on this call or whoever's going to be watching this to at least try it out. It's a free app. It's free for a reason, not because it doesn't work, but it's literally because we want to help people.
So before we open up to the audience to ask Q&A, because obviously, you're one of the very few people, or perhaps the only one I know of, that is working in wearable technology and transformative technology in Pakistan, other than perhaps Wonder Tree, of course. So what I know right now, it's just like so much of your future moves have kind of been put on pause because of the COVID and the Chinese New Year and all of that, and you're waiting on your headsets, and then you plan on starting it with the institutions in Karachi, and I know that you plan on offering it to the consumers in the North American hemisphere. But other than that, what are your future moves post this thing? Is it is it going to be driving awareness and business for this? Where do you see yourself in a few years? What do you think you'll be doing?
Yeah, so our plan, I'll go from immediately, during the COVID all the way up until 5 years. Obviously, during the COVID, because of this whole COVID situation, we had to kind of reframe our business model as well. So even in Pakistan, initially we were going to give one headset to an organization and have them use the headset with multiple patients in the clinics. But now, given that a lot of these clinics may not be operational, what we will do is what we're offering is remote monitoring. So they can send the device to their patient and then they can monitor their EEG live. And then every patient needs to use it obviously for 30 to 60 days to see improvement. So then per patient, they will need one device so that they can sit at home and monitor their brainwave activity and see if the therapy is working or not. Starting off with 10 organizations, by the end of year 2, we aim to have at the very least about 1,000 patients. I'm going to say patients and not organizations because there are very few clinics in Pakistan. So the plan is to have at least 1,000 people be using the headset. And then by year 3 is when we will start building the B2B business for the international market. So obviously going international for healthcare institutions requires certain certifications in place. We are in the process of already looking up what those certifications are. We know what they are. It requires a little bit of funding. Year 3 is when we're going to be actively fundraising to get those certifications to launch as a B2B product commercially in the international market, and have a separate headset model for B2B, for the B2B consumers, and a separate one for B2C consumers. So for those who might not know what B2B and B2C means, B2B is for basically selling to businesses, and B2C is selling to consumers. So the consumer model of ours will help people deal with stress, anxiety, depression. B2C model is going to be the one that a doctor can recommend and basically prescribe to you and say, okay, well, you have this condition, even if it's ADHD, if you get a doctor's approval of using the device, then you can take the device and use the consumer model of it. In clinics, we will be using the diagnostic tool, which is going to be FDA cleared, and we're going to be giving the diagnosis to the doctor so that they can diagnose more efficiently based on data-driven rather than just subjective behavior. So by year 5, we do aim to be in the international market, both as a B2C, B2B consumer product, but our primary driver will be the B2B model. And then right now, as I mentioned, we're looking at ADHD, depression, stress, anxiety. We want to start looking into more serious conditions, I wouldn't say serious, that's a bad word. I would say more difficult conditions that have not been catered to. So for example, schizophrenia. That's one that has a little bit of research available. Psychosis is another one. These are things that requires a little bit more research. Eventual goal is to be able to diagnose any and every mental health condition with the headset and provide therapy based on games, based on exercises, breathing exercises, meditation exercises, etc. So to basically complement existing healthcare solutions, be it with medication, be it without medication, but our solution is going to be personalized for the needs of each and every individual. That's the long-term goal.
Wow, that's amazing. I think how you've detailed it out, and it's really ambitious, and I think it's really good. So I'm going to now open it up for the audience to ask the questions that they have for you, or any comments that they would like to make. So if anyone would like to ask, please, you can just.
I think I want to ask. So first of all, thank you so much, Yishel. I think it was really lovely listening and learning more about what you're doing. It's an amazing work that you're doing, and I'm really looking forward for your app that you are saying that is about to be launched for mindfulness and guided meditation for Pakistan, I guess, for Urdu language. My question from you is like, are you with your device, do you have this kind of a backend system where you are collecting data and like for the research, or you are like, you have any agenda of or any plans like that, and what kind of if you're collecting data, what kind of data is there, and how that data can actually benefit other people to perform some research, or is it available to people to access, or it's like it's personal, or you're not allowing people to access? So that's my question from you.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. In terms of data, what we're collecting with the headset would be EEG. It would be raw EEG data. The reason why we are collecting it is because we're storing it on our cloud servers, is because I don't think I mentioned this component earlier, is we're going to be training an artificial machine learning algorithm. We have a machine learning algorithm for diagnosing different mental health conditions. So we're going to be training our algorithms using that data. Will that data be available to other people? That's a tricky question, because at the end of the day, we don't want to become one of those companies, a very big famous company. I don't want to take names. They went under a huge lawsuit because they started selling people's data. And that's a huge revenue model for a business, but that's not the core of who we are and what we want to do. So the minute you open up the data to public, then suddenly, people are interested in buying it from you. And then there comes a whole monetary aspect to it, which is something we do want to stay away from. In terms of the algorithms that we've used, yes, that we'll eventually open source because people can use the same ML algorithms. That's fine. But personalized data, I think that is something that's very important to a consumer as well. So as of now, I don't think we will be opening that up to the public.
Okay, thank you.
Wayne is asking whether the device has any stimulation of the vagus nerve. For those who don't know what the vagus nerve is, that's basically the longest nerve in the human body that basically connects our different mind and organs and stuff together. So there's a lot of interest these days in the transformative technology community about stimulating the vagus nerve, because people, believe that it can have a lot of positive spillover effects in different parts of our functioning. I don't know much more than that. Yishel, maybe you could elaborate on this.
Yeah, no. So the vagus nerve, it gets stimulated, and there's a lot of research. Happy to provide that to you offline as well, through breathing exercises. We're not going to be using electrical stimulation by any means to stimulate any part of the vagus nerve. As far as that's something we haven't researched, so I will not comment on that. But breathing exercises, that's the answer. The vagus nerve gets stimulated through different breathing exercises. And if you download our app and read the description of the 365 breathing method, you'll see it mentions that, we are stimulating the vagus nerve through holding your breath, through breathing in certain patterns. That's the way it goes to basically stimulate the nerve itself and induce the response you want. I think there's another question from him as well.
Yeah, so Wayne is also asking about the differences between the headset that Dot has made and the one that Muse has made.
Yeah, so Muse is one of our direct competitors now, considering we have entered the meditation realm as well. Prior to us being in the meditative space, the reason why we are different is because our primary focus was to help mental illnesses, mental disorders, be it ADHD, be it anxiety, stress. So the way it is different is our therapy is not so for Muse, as far as I remember, they had I think it's a scene where it's raining or something, and then you control that with your mind. The EEG signaling they're using to create the response is not the same as what we're using. So the device, yes, maybe the sensors and the electrical signaling aspect, the hardware aspect may be similar, but at the end of the day, the way we're using that data to create different responses based on mental health conditions is how we're different from Muse.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I think that that's obviously them being a main competitor, but I think that this field is just, I think it's blowing up in so many ways, and it's a bit of a wild west right now. It's what a lot of people say, because there's so many apps, and there's just recently that the FDA approved one game for ADHD, right, as a prescription based.
Labs, yes.
Yeah, Achilles Labs, the Endeavor RX. So and now there's a big wait list. So I think that's really going to open up the break the levee, so to speak. So I'm very excited with what .mind is doing, because I think it's a big space, and I think that the countries like Pakistan and the Middle East and so many other regions in the world. I mean, just like you have Uber is very good in some countries, but Careem is Very good. So just like this ride sharing, different countries have their own sort of ride share. And when we talk about culture and that type of thing, so even if a device is same, the way that it's executed that you were talking about can really change what it does, because if it's available in local languages, it's available in regional languages, or it really speaks to people, or some devices color can be very good in certain cultures, but that color is a unlucky color in another. So we have Faiza. Faiza wants to give a very short introduction of her NGO, and she says she's working on some same domain. Faiza, please go ahead.
Yeah, assalamu alaikum to everyone, and it's a very nice session to hear and to attend. I'm just free from the session. I'm conducting different sessions on mental health, mental therapy, self defense, fitness, and safety for women and children and for everyone. So basically my NGO is based on these two objectives. So yeah, mental health, mental therapy, and how it can be very useful for us in this scenario of COVID-19. So yeah, I'm impressed, and I'm inviting Yishel for her services as a speaker to my NGO. And I want to ask a question, like, for example, if like people living in rural areas do not have the facility for like these artificial intelligence products and services, then what they should do? For example, they are not educated enough, they are not aware enough about these type of techniques and skills. So what they should do?
So I think the
Absolutely.
first part is to, once again, as Heather earlier on mentioned, was to create awareness, right? It's about explaining, and this is not a one-time thing. It's something that requires a lot of effort. It requires a lot of campaigning. It requires educating people to understand what it means, to be able to make a difference. And then in terms of the headset itself, that's one of our goals is to pair up with organizations in those areas. So those organizations, their outreach will be in the rural areas. That way, that those people can get help. In terms of the app that's currently available, actually, so the way we're campaigning the app is we're running awareness campaigns to the lower socioeconomic groups in Pakistan as well, to educate them as to what the app is about. And then the second part is explaining how to use the app and targeting that area. So, that is one of the reasons we launched primarily on Android, is because we wanted to get help to the people who don't necessarily have other resources or can afford other resources.
Fantastic. I know you also told me, Yishel, that you already have also done, I believe, some outreach in rural communities. Is it?
Yeah, we're doing a lot of Facebook ad campaigning. That's what I was talking about. So we're running ads constantly to educate people. Throughout COVID, we were running campaigns targeting the lower socioeconomic groups, specifically to educate them as to what COVID is, how to deal with different, with COVID itself, alongside, stress, anxiety, depression, what mental health issues are, what phases it can take, and what they can do to prevent being in that state.
Okay, I think there's one more question from Wayne, where he's asking, do you try to measure heart rate variability, HRV? And
we don't.
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask the same thing. When we talk about EEG, what is the potential? I mean, EEG is reading brain waves, right? It's reading the activity in our brain, and the electrical activity in our brain, that which regions of the brain are firing, which ones are active, what is the magnitude of that thing. So how does that relate to knowing things like heart rate, or knowing things, other things that are going on in the body other than the brain? Or so, Lil, I think just a final kind of note about that approach.
Yeah, so the first version that will be commercialized would primarily focus on EEG. The second version of the headset that would come out, it would have additional sensors, not only to measure heart rate variability, but also to measure oxygen saturation levels. And combined with these different metrics, the aim is to look at things like sleep disorders. That's a big one for us too. So once you have these different metrics in place, you can not only base it on just mental health illnesses, everything, even sleep disorders have a EEG correlation to it. So you can correlate diagnosing different mental health, different sleep disorders, different sleep conditions through just additional of sensors. But in our initial scope, we're not, to answer his question, not right now, but in the second version, which will be for sleep clinicians specifically, that is something we will be adding. And I agree, that is something that can really help with the meditation app itself, considering we will be monitoring EEG. So that is going to be linked with the meditation app as well.
Excellent. So a lot of plans for the future for integration to get different biofeedbacks. Yishel, I wanted to ask, I think now we're kind of out of time. We started at 8:05, now 1 hour is up. I'm going to be conscious of your time and the time of our participants as well, unless someone has a burning question, which they can feel free. But other than that, I think, I want to thank you for your time. And I want to ask, there are, a few people who might want to contact you after this session. So what's the best way to kind of contact you, send you an email, or reach out to you on social media? So where are you available?
Yeah, they can reach us out on our Facebook inbox. Where Twitter, we're active, but not the most active. So Instagram, Facebook would be great places. Otherwise, if you want to send an email support@.mindunlock, I can type it if you want. Let me just write it in the chat box so they can email. Let me just write it over here if I can get my keypad to work. Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
so feel free to these email. I would share my personal email, but I don't know how appropriate that would be. So I'll just.
I think just share the dot email and perhaps the Facebook group for dot or your LinkedIn. Yeah. So I think those are generally pretty good places for work-related inquiries. So anyone, you can just Google .mindunlock and you will find Yishel. And also Yishel has a very unique name. At least I feel Yishel is a unique name. So search Yishel Khan .mind. You should find her. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you everyone for attending. And hopefully I'll see you guys at our next meetup whenever that is, maybe in a month or two. And goodbye.